Lindisfarne, an island located off the of the east coast of England, was the site of a horrific incident that marked the beginning of the Viking Age. This event took place in the year 793 AD. This raid was the first catastrophic meeting between Western Europe and the Vikings, and it was the event that sparked off 3 centuries of fear across the continent. Vikings were a group of pagan pirates that originated in Scandinavia. They were known for their fearsome longships and their expertise of seamanship, which allowed them to launch sudden and unexpected raids that left a trail of destruction in their wake. As a demonstration of their audacity, they even attacked Constantinople, which was referred to as Miklagard in Old Norse. Their raids spread from Europe all the way into Russia and the Mediterranean. Professor Tom Shippey, an expert in Viking history and medieval literature, says that their distinctive mentality also contributed to their lethal edge. This is in addition to the fact that their maritime prowess played a vital role in their success. Despite the fact that there is considerable doubt about the historical veracity of the sagas written in Old Norse, Shippey asserts that the abundance of sagas written in that language provides insights into the thinking of the Vikings. These sagas, which include the sagas of Icelanders, sagas of kings, and sagas of old times, provide a peek into the culture, values, and philosophy of the Vikings. Shippey contends that even if some aspects of the sagas may be fictitious, they all have a constant mentality that he refers to as the Viking mindset. This way of thinking is characterized by a dark sense of humor and a fixation with death, as indicated by the themes and tone that are pervasive in the sagas. Shippey suggests that in order to further illustrate the mindset of the Vikings, he will investigate 5 well-known death sequences from Old Norse sagas. These events will show the Vikings' perspectives on death, heroism, and comedy. By analysing these scenarios, academics have the opportunity to obtain significant insights into the culture and psychology of the Vikings, shedding light on the complexity of this mysterious civilization and the contribution it made to the history of Europe. Through the examination of Viking sagas and the manner in which they depict death and humour, researchers are able to get a more profound comprehension of the Viking Age and the long imprint it left behind in the period of European medieval history. In Norse mythology, Ragnar Lothbrok is a legendary man, and his mythology is full of stories of both heroic deeds and terrible occurrences. Ragnar Lothbrok is famous for his heroic deeds. They say that he was the son of a Swedish monarch and that he was famous for his exploits, which included the death of a dragon. In addition, it is believed that he was famous for his exploits. During the course of his story, he is described as having this reputation. He went to England in spite of this, with the intention of achieving renown and fortune. And it was in England that he came into contact with King Ella of Northumbria. At the end of the tale, it is told that King Ella threw Ragnar into a pit that was full with snakes that were dangerous to humans. The narrative comes to a dramatic conclusion with this. During the final moments of his life, Ragnar spoke the cryptic words, "Inithia mundu grisir ef galtar hagvisi," which have been subject to a variety of interpretations over the period of several centuries. An investigation that was conducted not too long ago reveals that it was a veiled threat that was directed at King Ella, indicating that Ragnar's sons would seek retribution for the death of their father. Contrary to the common understanding of the phrase, which is that it was a request for assistance, this reading of the phrase is as follows. The linguistic play with the term gnu which means both grunt and oink in Old Norse, lends an air of irony to Ragnar's proclamation, highlighting the inevitability of the impending disaster that may be anticipated to befall King Ella. In contrast, the truth of Ragnar's death in the snake pit is called into question by academics who feel that it was a later embellishment that was constructed in order to explain Ragnar's son's eventual invasion of England. This is because the researchers believe that the snake pit was a place where Ragnar was killed. In the year 865, the Ragnarsons did, in fact, arrive in England with a powerful force upon their arrival. As a means of exacting vengeance for the tragic death of their father, they first caused widespread destruction throughout East Anglia and Northumbria, and then, in the end, they took the life of King Ella. The notion that the saga narrative of Ragnar's death worked as propaganda to collect support for the invasion is given additional support by this historical event, which adds legitimacy to the hypothesis. There are a great number of historical occurrences that confirm this viewpoint. It is possible that there is a relationship between the events that actually took place and the narrative of Ragnar's death that is told in the saga. Why did the Ragnar sons decide to go on a mission to conquer England? They did it to take vengeance for their father. According to the chronicles of Norse mythology, King Hrolf Kraki, a legendary Danish monarch who ruled about the 6th century, is depicted as a guy who possessed both valor and intrigue. The enormous hall that he had, which was located in close proximity to Lera, served as a symbol of his power and hospitality. He had the pleasure of entertaining a well-known band of champions at this auditorium over the course of his career. Nevertheless, his reign was not without its challenges, since his own cousin, Sjurvartha, had ambitions of coming to the throne. This meant that his reign was not without its challenges. When Hjörvartha's soldiers launched an unexpected morning assault on Hrolf's hall, they were able to overrun the defenders, which finally resulted in the death of Hrolf and the loss of his champions. Hrolf's hall was the target of the assault. The only person who managed to escape the extensive destruction was Vega, the weakest man in Hrolf's court. Despite the fact that he had been rejected for a considerable amount of time, Vega had made a solemn vow to exact revenge for the death of his king. Unbeknownst to him, Hjörvartha reached out to Vega for his allegiance, which unknowingly provided him with the opportunity to exact revenge. This was a change in circumstances that was utterly unexpected. Vega took advantage of the given chance and defeated the usurper, putting an end to the Stildung dynasty from that point forward. This occurred after Vega was presented with Hjörvartha's sword as a mark of his commitment. The fact that Vega met his own end not long after that does not change the fact that he was able to keep his word and demonstrate the wit and cunning that are characteristic of the Vikings. The legend of King Hrolf Kraki, which was previously thought to be nothing more than a fable, has been given more credibility as a result of recent findings made in archaeological locations. A series of gigantic halls have been discovered during excavations that have been carried out in the vicinity of Lera, Denmark. These halls provide proof that a significant power centre existed during the early hours of the Viking Age. It is because of these finds that the traditions of King Hrolf have been given a deeper feeling of historical legitimacy. These discoveries also highlight the way in which Norse mythology mixes legend and truth. The Jomsvikings are a legendary company of Viking mercenaries who are bonded by a strict code of honor. There are many stories that are associated with the Jomsvikings that involve bravery and shrewdness. There is evidence in the Old Norse sagas that they constructed a formidable stronghold at Jomsburg, which is situated on the coast of the Baltic Sea. They carried out daring exploits from this bastion, which they occupied. The King of Denmark called upon them in the year 986 to participate in a fight with Jarl Håkon of Lauda, which ultimately led to a decisive battle that took place at Hjörungavágr. This battle was ultimately successful. It was despite the fact that the Jomsvikings were known for their reputation that Jarl Håkon and his son, Jarl Erik, were able to achieve a victory that was devastating over the Jomsvikings. Following the completion of the battle, the Jomsviking prisoners were placed in a position where they were at risk of being executed, which was a destiny that was commonly meted out in Viking combat. Those who were sentenced, on the other hand, demonstrated instances of defiance and dark humour, in spite of the sad proceedings that were taking place. In accordance with the Jomsviking Code, one of the convicts insisted on being beheaded while standing and refused to show any evidence of fear under any circumstances, including death. This individual was also adamant about being executed. On the other hand, another man, exhibiting a sick sense of humour, asked for aid in hiding his hair from blood during the execution, which resulted in a turn of events that was both horrible and humorous. In spite of the fact that many of these accounts may appear to be nothing more than fancy, the narratives of the epic have been given additional credibility as a result of recent archaeological discoveries. A mass grave that comprised skulls and bones that had been separated from their heads was uncovered during excavations in a location that is believed to be close to the area where the legendary battle took place. A comprehensive analysis of the remains confirmed that they originated from Scandinavia and discovered remarkable similarities to the saga's accounts of killings carried out in big numbers. The saga describes killings that were carried out in great numbers. As a result of these discoveries, the complicated relationship that exists between myth and truth in Viking sagas is brought to light, and attention is drawn to the potential historical facts that are disguised inside legendary narratives. When examined from the point of view of archaeology, the epic of the Jomsvikings takes on a newfound level of reality that was not before there. This sheds light on the horrifying facts of Viking warfare, as well as the continuing impact that Norse culture has had on the world. In the years leading up to his conversion to Christianity in the year 1029, Olaf Haraldsson, who would go on to become the King of Norway and eventually become the patron saint of the nation, had initially established his legacy as a terrifying Viking. His tenure was beset by conflicts with the Danes and the local Jarls, which ultimately led to his banishment from the land. The continuation of his reign occurred in the midst of chaos. In spite of this, Olaf made his return the next year and once again engaged in combat with a formidable army of pagan farmers. The unyielding determination to reclaim his dominance over the land was the driving force behind his actions. Before the critical battle, Olaf took solace in the lyrics of his poet Thormod, who delivered the Björkmau poetry, which conjured up the spirit of King Hrolf's final stand. Thormod's poem was performed by Olaf. Olaf was able to find serenity as a result of Thormod's poem. Without letting the gloomy prophecy contained within the poem, which stated that the warriors would definitely perish, deter them from continuing their march forward, Olaf and his army resumed their march forward. In the midst of the mayhem, Olaf found himself on the receiving end of a persistent assault of spears and axes, which ultimately led to his death. The confrontation that ensued turned out to be a terrible and violent conflict on several occasions. Despite the fact that his committed companions made a valiant effort, they were eventually unsuccessful due to the insurmountable hurdles that appeared in their path. In the midst of the chaos, the poet Thormod managed to survive, only to lament the fact that he was unable to become a part of the afterlife alongside his dead monarch. Nevertheless, fate took action, and an arrow that appeared to have been given by Olaf from beyond the dead ended up taking Thormod's life, fulfilling his wish to be reunited with someone. In the final moments of his life, Thormod penned a poignant tribute to the fatal wound he had sustained, but he did not finish it before taking his last breath. While he is still standing, he continues to recite the poem. Unfortunately, he is unable to finish the final line, which, thankfully, is finished for him by a bystander. He dies away on his feet. The youthful Harald Hardrada, who is in his teenage years, is a bystander in this circumstance. Harald Hardrada, who is considered to be one of the most formidable Viking leaders, ascended to the throne of Norway after a series of remarkable adventures that took him from the courts of Grand Prince Yaroslav the Wise in Kiev to commanding the prestigious Varangian Guard in Constantinople under the Byzantine Emperor. Harald Hardrada is regarded as one of the most powerful Viking leaders. Many people consider him to be one of the most powerful leaders among the Vikings. In spite of this, his ambitions went beyond the borders of Norway, and in 1066, he set his sights on becoming the monarch of England. His aspirations were not limited to Norway. King Harold Godwinson, who had promptly prepared his forces to intercept the Norwegian invasion fleet at the Battle of Stamford Bridge, was put in the position of having to struggle with him as a result of this audacious effort from the Norwegian government. The stifling heat caused Harold and his men to abandon their heavy armour and shields, which meant that they were unprepared for the fight on the battlefield. The element of surprise was a significant contributor to the victory of the English, as it successfully caught them off guard and enabled them to emerge victorious in the conflict. On the other side, Harold exhibited a level of bravery that had never been seen before by leading his warriors into combat while simultaneously writing songs that represented the unfortunate truth of their situation. The narratives from the sagas, which were recorded by Snorri Sturluson, have highlighted Harold's resistance in the face of looming doom, which represents the mindset that is distinctive of the Vikings. These poetry pieces, on the other hand, have been called into question by academics, who have questioned whether or not they were genuinely written by Harold, or whether they were augmented by future historians for dramatic effect. On the other hand, the legitimacy of these poetry pieces has been put into question. Nevertheless, regardless of where they came from, these verses represent the spirit of the Viking culture, which is a combination of perseverance, bravery, and a fatalistic acceptance of one's fate. In spite of the fact that it culminated in a humiliating loss for the Norwegians, the Battle of Stamford Bridge had repercussions that were far-reaching and had several implications. It made it possible for another invader, William the Conqueror, to ascend to the throne of England and take control of the country. The unwavering determination to persevere in the face of hardship, and the preference for lightness in the midst of the most difficult of circumstances are the qualities that will continue to captivate and inspire future generations till the end of time. In spite of the fact that the Viking Age in Europe has recently come